Hello, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With me today, James Howard Kunstler. He's a journalist and a published author. He's had 11 novels out. His career started in the 70s at Rolling Stone magazine. He has progressed from there. He's written all the books, as I've said, and also he's still a journalist, and he has his site, Kunstler.com. Well, James, good to be here. Good to have you here.
Nice to be with you.
Okay. James, you have been in the journalism game for a long time. I'm surprised at how much on Kunstler.com you write about the economy. Of course, that's the big story as a journalist, the economy. What's your appraisal of what's going on in Europe? You know, last week we had the big Spanish bailout, or at least another bailout of Spanish banks. Italy's in trouble. Their next reports are. What do you think's going on with the whole debt crisis and the banking insolvency crisis?
I think the money is not there. And everything that's been going on has been an attempt to conceal the fact that there's no money, that there's no more money. You know, to some extent in our age, money is only an agreement between people that it's there. You know, since it can be created digitally and at really just at command and doesn't have to be backed by anything. And you have a whole range of global banking institutions that are broke, and they're trying every way they possibly can to conceal the fact that they're insolvent and that they really need to declare bankruptcy. And so we're seeing all these tremendous machinations to avoid that. I frankly don't understand why they don't just go through normal bankruptcy proceedings and, you know, fire the executives and let the equity holders just lose all their money and, sell off whatever assets are left. But they don't want to do that.
You know, Jamie Dimon was in front of Congress, in front of the Senate last week, and he was talking about how the financial system is really safer now than it was 4 years ago. Do you think it's safer than it was in 2008?
Well, Jamie's pretending. Jamie is in Congress right now because his company lost what now seems to be about $3 billion, but we don't really know what the eventual workout of that is going to be. And the reason he's in Congress is because these banks are now covered by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, meaning that the deposits are insured, and it means that Congress has an interest in knowing what the banks are doing with the depositors' money, and possibly preventing the banks from playing fast and loose with it. So that's why Jamie ended up in there. But you know, we've had the mysterious case of John Corzine and MF Global, in which another very large sum of money disappeared, and there has been no regulatory response, no law enforcement response. John Corzine is still at large. The people who lost their money, a lot of them bankers and ranchers, by the way, because these were commodity accounts. They lost all their money, and they're not getting it back. And this is just an incredibly fragile system that is playing fast and loose with the truth. And it's lying about everything. And, you know, it's a very, very dangerous game to continue lying and piling lies upon lies. And our civilization is going to be in trouble if we keep on doing this.
You know, you were telling me in a past conversation that, you know, the government really is the enabler.
Yeah.
And you know, I was stunned when I was watching the hearings last week how nobody brought up the fact that Jamie Dimon's bank, J.P. Morgan Chase, has more than $70 trillion in derivatives. One bank has more derivatives than the entire world GDP. And other big banks like Goldman Sachs have something like $44 trillion, and Citi and Bank of America more than $50 trillion in derivatives and interest rate swaps. And to the common guy, what kind of risk out there is to the common guy? Oh, and incidentally, as far as the enablers, not a single person that I heard was asking, hey, you think the system is safer? You have $70 trillion. According to the Comptroller of the Currency, there's more than $230 trillion in these risky trades and just among 5 top banks. What's going on? Or $220 trillion, something like that? More than $200 trillion of these risky trades? And you think the system is safer? What do you say?
I say it's self-evident that just the figures involved, the trillions of dollars, are so inconceivable that they're virtually meaningless. There's no question that these wagers between parties who can't back up their wagers they're never going to be executed. The whole credit default swap trade is really nothing more than a smokescreen to conceal the essential insolvency, bankruptcy of these institutions. And what we refuse to deal with their bankruptcy and what that means. And what it really means is a future in America where capital formation is horribly impaired, and we're not able to raise the money that we need to carry on the activities that will allow us to continue being civilized. And this includes things like, paying for the rebuilding of the conventional American railroad system, which is a project that I've been trying to promote, or any kind of other action that we might take to protect ourselves in the future.
I always ask this question of folks, and I'm amazed at how much you cover the financial situation. In a way, I'm amazed, and in a way, I'm not. Any journalist knows that the financial story, whether you're a financial journalist or not, is the big story of our generation. Without
yes,
question.
It is.
It
oh,
is,
yeah.
Right? When do you see the wheels coming off? When do we finally get to the edge of the cliff and start feeling that, drawdown that, hey, there's nothing underneath me?
Oh, I think the wheels are coming off this week. They've been coming off for a few months, really. But the Spanish bailout is just the latest and most comical exercise in, what has been a string of gestures and actions taken by, Europe and modeled on things that we did in the United States, namely bailouts. But, the idea that all of these rescue operations, the European Financial Stability Fund or the European Central Bank or any of those organizations actually have the money or could come up with the money to perform these bailouts is a joke. There's just a story on Wednesday last week about the Italians now borrowing money at roughly 6%, so they can loan it out to Spain at 3%. It's become what we used to call the Polish blanket trick, where you want to make your blanket longer, so you cut a foot off the top and sew it onto the bottom. Only in the process, you're losing about 3 inches, just by hemming the material. So, the whole thing's a dead loss, and it's all a big game of pretend that we're solvent, pretend that we can cover our loans and cover our interest payments. And the fact is, nobody can cover their interest payments. All the loans are bad, and we're pretending that they're not. And that is going to, make us ratchet down to a lower standard of living all around the globe. And that's where we're headed with this. It really, the main question is really not what our destination is, because there's no question that our destination is a lower standard of living. The question is how disorderly will that process be, and how much hardship will it impose on, the populations of the U.S. or the various European nations, or for that matter, China, because China will eventually be going through a similar process themselves.
War in the Middle East. No matter who starts it, Iran, Israel, Syria, Russia, China, the U.S., the U.K., they've been in meetings to try to discuss Iran's nuclear program and try to avert war. There are, sanctions, increasing sanctions, even sort of a blockade of air and sea that's coming in Iran, apparently. If there is war, no matter who starts it, what happens to the economy?
The economy gets into a huge amount of trouble all over the world, all the advanced nations, that depend on fossil fuels get crushed because we're talking about the basic supply system for energy for all these big economies, the shipping lanes and the pipelines, and you can't remove. I don't know whether it's 23% or 27%, whatever it is, of the world's oil coming out of this region without enormous consequences. And then you see the train of other consequences that grow out of that, like you see supply lines start to crumple. And, eventually the food doesn't arrive in the American supermarkets, and then you've got a tremendous political problem.
You wrote a book, your upcoming book, I believe it's out in July. It's called Too Much Magic. And it's about how basically technology is not going to save us. And Too Much Magic is kind of a little bit of another one of your future casts that tell us about what you see in the future based on your book, Too Much Magic. It's out in July.
Well, technology's become sort of the new supernatural religion for certainly for America and for a lot of the advanced world. And we're hoping that Santa Claus will deliver rescue remedies so we can continue living exactly the way we are. That's why so much of the conversation in America is about how we're going to run all the cars by other means than gasoline. We talk about hybrids and all electric cars and, running the cars on natural gas or algae secretions, The fact of the matter is we're not going to run the American motoring system by other means. We're going to have to make other arrangements for daily life, and it will probably involve things like more walkable communities and cities and towns, towns that are designed to exist in a meaningful relationship with agriculture, a public transit system that is meaningful, and in my view, that would mean reviving the conventional American railroad system, because the capital scarcities will prevent us from building those high-speed rail systems, which are part of too much magic waiting for Santa Claus syndrome. So, those are some of the things that we have to do to get ready. And in the meantime, we're doing everything we can to mount a campaign to sustain the unsustainable. And that's partly why the American presidential electoral debate or conversation is so inane, because it's really a conversation between two guys whose main objective is to keep sustaining the unsustainable. It represents a tremendous poverty of imagination to be able to see where it is that we're actually going. And reality has other plans for us. Reality is going to drag us kicking and screaming into this future, whether we want to go there or not. So it would be a lot better for us if we could get our heads straight with reality.
Derivatives. You think there's no saving it. It's just a matter of when it all blows up and unwinds, not a matter of if. A matter of when. Is that right, or am I wrong?
Well, it's a tremendously dangerous situation because it just represents a daisy chain of wagers that simply can't be fulfilled. And, the first break in the chain, the first bank that turns around and says, oh, well, I can't pay that credit default swap bet that I made. That's going to wreck the whole credit default swap system. And it's a system in which if any one of those agreements or bets fails to pay off, they're all broken. So, as I said, it's really not a real financial instrument. Warren Buffett was correct at least about this when he called them weapons of financial destruction, mass destruction, because they will create havoc in the system when that happens. But, I think one way or another, the banks are largely insolvent and need to be deconstructed through the most conventional bankruptcy proceedings.
Howard Kunstler, your new book, it's out in July. It's called Too Much Magic. Thank you for being on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you. Nice to be here.